Hi, my name is Nikki. This is The Interventionalist. And today I really want to talk about the predatory lesbian trope and how that can manifest in your personal relationships as a lesbian or how it can affect you in your personal relationships as a lesbian or a sapphic individual. And the reason that I want to talk about this and I've been thinking about it is because I've actually gotten quite a few messages about this topic in particular and also a few comments. And I think that it's really important to talk about. And I also think it kind of relates to the consent video I just did the other day because I want to make that a series. And while this isn't, I think, directly related to consent, I do think that there's a conversation to be had around consent that particularly sapphics and lesbians probably it would probably be helpful to talk about, which is now like being hypersensitive to consent because of this trope. And the topic in general is one that I think relates to something else that I've talked about actually in a TikTok a long time ago, but it's the way that I don't know, I feel perpetually weird for being gay. Like it's something that I've really struggled with, which is the idea that I'm weird, but obviously you're internalizing these stereotypes and these ideas about being gay already because it's considered abnormal, unnatural, a sin, all of these harmful homophobic stereotypes and ideologies that we internalize, feeling like we're abnormal or unnatural or weird or creepy for being gay. But I've always felt kind of weird, even in situations with other LGBTQ people, other lesbians. And it's getting better, like the more time I spend around gay people and the longer that I'm out and just living as a lesbian. But because I grew up in a way that really, really enforced that narrative that gay people are weird and creepy, that was really the rhetoric, especially within my household. I grew up in a really conservative area, but definitely in my household, especially, that was the idea that was passed around, particularly from my dad, who's a lot better now, but he thought that gay people were creepy and sick, that they were sick and should be put on an island. Like, he really pushed this idea that there was something really wrong with them and not good to be around. And it's kind of like, if they touch you, you'll get sick. So like, don't touch me. Like, why would anyone consent to being touched in any capacity by a gay person? I don't even mean sexually, because there's something wrong with them. And, I really internalized that idea. And so I grew up a little kid always knowing from a very young age that I liked girls and also knowing that something was very deeply wrong with that idea or believing that. And so I spent a lot of my childhood being very othered for it, and internalizing that sort of severe experience of being othered because you're supposedly unnatural and abnormal. As I got older, I started to find it difficult to believe, even in situations where that was proven not to be the case. I'm around a lot of other queer people, other lesbians. People are just being gay, and we're being gay together. It would be hard for me to like be in that moment and not think, oh my God, this is so weird. Like, other people are gay. Like, we're actually gay together. Other people are also gay. It was hard for me to sort of believe that other people were also experiencing what I was experiencing because it was so severely othered that it was hard to imagine anyone else had the same experience as me. And in my head, it was kind of like, wow, you're just as weird as me. Like, you're actually just as weird as me. Like, can that really be possible? Like, can other people also be this abnormal and weird as me and experience same-sex attraction? Are they actually experiencing it as well? And sort of projecting that idea that it felt like it's really unnatural, impossible, and sort of a one-off like accident of nature, because that was really like the narrative that I was fed, that I'm thinking I'm the one-off failure of nature. So it's hard for me to believe that other people are also, these one-off apparently like failures of nature, which is not true, obviously. But it just like really caused me to internalize the idea that nobody else was actually experiencing the same thing that I was, which was genuine attraction for the same sex. And so it made it hard for me to believe that other people could feel that way towards me, or like trust that other people were feeling it in general, because I was like the weirdo for feeling it. And so when I was around other gay people, and it's less so now, I'd be like, oh my God, this is so weird, like we're gay together. It was actually something I would say to my ex-girlfriend quite often, and she like didn't get it, she didn't understand, but sometimes I'd be like, oh my, isn't this just so weird, like we're gay together. And she just didn't understand. She'd be like, I mean, yeah, I don't know why you say that so often, but yeah. And I mean, I'm glad she didn't understand. I guess she grew up in a very liberal way. Her parents were never homophobic, grew up in a very liberal situation. So I think that's where we differed. She never really felt othered for it, or abnormal for it. And I guess because that wasn't my situation, that wasn't my scenario, where I still felt very weird for it. And the thing is, because I think we can internalize this idea so deeply that we're weird, enough so that it's hard to even believe that anybody else could also be like us, experiencing what we experience. I think that's one of the ways in which you can feel inherently weird or creepy for exercising these gay feelings, essentially. Because I experience gay attraction, right? Like I experience attraction for other women. And I think that it's so abnormal and weird, or I've internalized that to the point where it's like, okay, but does anyone else actually feel that way? And am I only inherently, because I am weird, imposing myself on somebody else because I'm a weirdo and gay people are weird and sick? And like, would me even like assuming that someone else, even if they told me that they are gay, am I just being creepy and weird? And is it even possible because I'm so weird that anyone else is actually this weird? And there's all of this like mental gymnastics happening in my head, sometimes subconsciously and sometimes consciously, where I'm just like worried that I'm being weird because I'm gay. And so practicing my gayness in real life, exercising gay behavior, is inherently weird or creepy, because that's what I've been told being gay is. And then assuming I'm so other that nobody else would even also want to be on the other end or exercise like gay behaviors, essentially, even if they are being gay towards me that way. I'm like, okay, but what? Like, are you actually? Or are you just doing this? Like, am I being weird? You know what I mean? It's hard to explain. But I think one of the other ways that it manifests and can make me feel like, oh my God, I'd be so weird to ever like make a move on a woman in general and it always be unwanted. And I'm like, it took a long time for me to get past this in particular. And I still struggle with this, is because I've been so socialized within that narrative that being gay is so abnormal, not natural. There's like no one else is like that. Nobody else around me was like that. I was so othered for it that nobody else is experiencing it. And so it's hard to imagine that anyone else could want me in a gay way. I never think that anyone is attracted to me, ever. Every time I like a girl, or I'm like, oh my God, she's so beautiful, or like, I wish I could talk to her, I always end up telling my friends, oh, but I can't do that because I'm not her type. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, you don't know that? And I'm just like, no, I'm not. They're like, you say that about everyone. And I'm like, yeah, but it's true. I'm not anyone's type. I don't think anyone will be attracted to me. And I'm sure there's other stuff at play there, but I never think someone is attracted to me. But a lot of it comes from the fact that I just kind of think, oh, there's no way they'll be attracted to me because will they actually be like gay the same way I'm gay and actually feel attraction that way, because no one else is actually as weird as I am. Like, maybe it's all fake and everyone else is normal and okay and healthy and I'm still the weirdo. And so it's hard for me to believe that it could be reciprocal in nature, that double-sided attraction. And so to express it to somebody else felt so wildly uncomfortable, because it was hard for me to truly believe within myself that my cat's like running around, another person could experience the same desire and want for like gay interaction, and would not just be immediately uncomfortable being approached by like another woman, sort of like inherently unwanted. And that translated obviously even into situations where that's really not the case. Like, it's a gay situation, you're on a gay date. Even if a girl like went out of her way to tell me that she really liked me, all of this stuff, I was like, okay, but what if, like, I still was like, what if I'm being weird for being gay around her? Like, what if I'm still being weird for being gay around her? And I think that brings into play like a lot of other ideas that this made me think a lot about. And one of them is, so there already is this predatory lesbian trope, which I think is important to talk about first, and then talk about flipping the dominant scripts in terms of romance and sexuality. But first I'm going to talk about what the actual lesbian trope is and how it's being integrated into our lives and probably continuously impacting us, even if not directly, through things like what my dad used to say when I was a kid. So I did a little bit of research on this, and it is disappointing because there's not a lot of like real research or stats related to the way that lesbians or sapphics are portrayed in media in the harmful ways, but there is some articles written about it. And here's one that was talking about some different sort of LGBTQ myths that are harmful, and it does bring up the lesbian trope, and this is how it defines it. This trope sends the message that a woman who is attracted to other women is dangerous. It tells audiences that being attracted to women will make a woman resort to stalking, violence, and sexual misconduct in order to show her affection, which translates into an isolation of lesbians. This trope leads to the perception, this woman is into women, therefore she will hit on me, when that is rarely the case. It also adds to the stereotype of women loving women equating sexual deviancy, since they have a predatory approach, when realistically lesbians tend to be more cautious about their affections, which is so true, which is why I think this kind of relates to the consent topic I've talked about before, which I'll talk about more. But I think on the flip side, not to say that there can't be people in lesbian situations that are behaving in these predatory manners, but I think a lot of lesbians, and why I think this is a helpful conversation to have within the sapphic community, become hypersensitive to consent. And I think for different reasons, which I'll talk about. But that's sort of the idea behind the predatory lesbian trope, which is that we're creepy and weird for expressing this unnatural, abnormal thing about us, right? Because that's what the idea is. This is a sin and unnatural and abnormal. So to express it would result in being abnormal and thus making people uncomfortable. I would be really afraid to hit on women and for a long time make any form of the first move, even on gay dates where there's like gay behavior kind of being expected, depending on the situation, right? You read the room. But I just felt worried that I would make this other person uncomfortable because I'm gay and I experience attraction, and I don't want you to think that just because I'm gay and experience attraction that I'm immediately going to be like sexually attracted to you. I don't know how to explain it other than it sort of puts sex and sexual attraction at the forefront of all of your gay experiences, and thus makes you feel creepy because you're worried that the other person is going to be uncomfortable and think that you, because you're gay and you experience gay attraction and gay thoughts, are immediately thinking about them in this reductionist way where you're thinking about them sexually. Even if you're on a gay date and you're just like interested in them romantically and want to get to know them or maybe like hold their hand, but you're not thinking about them really sexually at all and not wanting somebody to feel that way, like they're being sexualized. But because a lot of this predatory lesbian trope does, and I think when you make a lot of what homophobia does is reduces people down to sex and their supposed sexual attraction for somebody just because they are of the sex that this person is attracted to. But because it's not heterosexual, it's considered deviant and thus making you deviant and your behavior creepy and imposing your unnatural weird behavior. And I don't think that just disappears when you're in gay situations with somebody else who is gay. Like I said, that followed me into gay situations where I still like had a hard time trusting or believing that somebody else could internally be experiencing the same experience as I was, this lesbian experience, my lesbian attraction. And so it made me even more hesitant and worried that I wasn't being the weird gay one in a situation that consisted of two lesbians, because I had internalized the idea that I was so weird and unnatural and the other for so long. To see someone as another, like me, was really hard for me. And it made me very standoffish and very afraid of being too upfront or creepy. And I'm talking about just like the most basic flirty compliment. And then I was reading about how this can show up in media. And one film that is a really great example that there's quite a bit of writing on where the predatory lesbian trope is very obvious is in Pitch Perfect, and with the character Cynthia. What's her last name? Cynthia Rose. And in it, basically her whole personality is to be creepy and predatory. And here's a quote from another article about it. I'll link everything below as well that I'm reading from. But in Pitch Perfect, being predatory is basically Cynthia's sole personality trait. In the first movie, she randomly gropes Stacy's breast during a group argument, to which Stacy snaps, "Get off of me," and backs away from her in fear and disgust. Cynthia is always ogling Stacy or touching her without her consent. So essentially the film turned her into just a creep, a weirdo. They're treating her as someone who's just inherently going to be creepy because she's gay, and the only way that her gayness or her queerness or her lesbianness can be established in the show is by being creepy towards other women. And that's so harmful and really like harmful and scary to internalize as another lesbian who is already internalizing the idea that you being gay is going to be weird. So to express it in any way is going to be weird and unnatural. And now you're seeing it in media as something that is expressed in that way. When it is expressed, it's expressed not only in a predatory manner, but it's going to be something met with disgust. But again, in this situation, it's met with disgust because it's predatory. But there's also this underlying now subconscious idea that anytime you express your gayness, there's a good chance it's going to be met with disgust just because you've internalized that. It's sort of disgusting behavior. It's a disgusting trait you have, kind of. I think that's kind of what it comes back to, is like that internalized homophobia that sees being lesbian or being gay or being queer as being weird. There's something weird about you. There's some sort of mutilation within you that is not normal. And so to express it, it's of course not going to come across normal. Nor will it be met with like, I don't know, acceptance. But in this case, obviously, it's being portrayed in a very scary, harmful, disturbing way. And then there was another article that wrote a bit about this and touched on the same subject. And in this, the author said, with that being said, queer women typically act oppositely from Cynthia Rose. We're so horrified at the thought of straight women viewing us as predatory that we shut down. We glance away when you're changing, we set boundaries, and we don't try to pressure our friends into doing something they don't want to do. But in Pitch Perfect, being predatory is basically Cynthia's sole personality trait. And I think that speaks to something so important, which is, well, yes, lesbians can, and within the sapphic community and sapphic relationships, there definitely can be this like predatory nature and people can behave in this way. But I think so many lesbians are very hypersensitive to consent and the discomfort of others, to the point where a lot of us will avoid initiation or any kind of initiating acts for any form of intimacy. I mean the most basic, like nothing sexual. I'm just talking about like flirting, kind of like, I don't know, flirting intimacy, emotional intimacy, because of fear that we're going to make somebody uncomfortable. And that's a hard line to toe when obviously you want to cross the platonic barrier and be intimate, even if it's just like say something flirty, but being so terrified of making somebody else uncomfortable. And I think not only are we internalizing this predatory idea that's being portrayed in media, and even if maybe at the time you're not out yet, you're not out as a lesbian, but you're watching things like this, I think it's a bit naive to think that it's not impacting you, even if you're not out yet or fully aware of your identity or come to terms with your sexuality. You're still internalizing these ideas and being exposed to them. And I think that's going to have an impact. But I think that we become so afraid of initiating anything that a lot of us can get stuck in this limbo where we never cross sort of the platonic barrier, even in a situation between two people who actually are very into each other and would like to go do more with the other person, be romantic, cross into that romantic barrier, but both terrified of making the other uncomfortable. And also having to push past and have to begin rewriting the script when it comes to their romantic interactions, because we've been given a dominant script through the way that we're socialized in this heterosexual, heteronormative culture. We've been given a dominant script and we sort of just internalize it, and that's what we follow, and we can kind of sort of mindlessly follow the script when we're in romantic interactions. And if you're in a heterosexual interaction and it's very heteronormative, it's like mindless. You don't even have to think twice. It's second nature that you behave in these certain ways. And if you're a woman and a man's going to behave in this way, he's going to most likely be the one initiating things. So, for example, there's a line from a book that I referenced in my consent video, but it talks a lot about these dominant sexual scripts. And one of the things that it says about this is, like our dominant sexual scripts, these tropes are highly gendered and heteronormative. They're built on ideas of how men and women should feel and act when it comes to sex. They assume men who are the active initiators and women who are the passive gatekeepers, frequently less driven by their own sexual desire than by considerations of social standing. And I think this is so important to note, because now assume you're in a situation and both of you like the other person, right? Like you would like to cross that platonic barrier and you're really trying to push through the idea that you're just inherently going to be creepy, that everything you do that is gay is going to be inherently weird, because how could it not be weird? Because being gay is weird. And you're in a situation where you like the person and like it's pretty clear that they like you, but you're still afraid of like pushing past that platonic barrier. I think a lot of it not only can come from something else I want to talk about, which is knowing from experience the way that so many of us have been conditioned to not say no out of being polite, but also because you'd have to flip the script. So say it's like a date with two cis femme women, right? You're going to have to flip the script because there's not going to be like those, what we associate with this like heteronormative dynamic, which tends to be just in general someone who is more masculine presenting and has like a more masculine personality, I guess. That, would you really say that? But more masculine presenting, more feminine presenting. You have these two individuals, and with those, like, there's kind of this idea that can come with it. Like, you have a script that you kind of, I think, have internalized, you can fall back on. And no matter what the situation, it's helpful for us to begin to unlearn the script, right? But they sort of naturally, because of our socialization, get attached to these situations if there are these two kind of individuals in it. And say you're in a situation now where it's two femmes in general, and it's like, oh, okay, we're gonna need to, someone is going to have to take on, essentially, if you want to say it like that, but like take on this role that we're so socialized to attribute to the more masculine individual or cis man. And so a lot of people like joke about how when you're on a date with a femme as another femme, like it never goes anywhere. It's really hard for it to go anywhere because you're both, I think, not only probably fighting this like fear of making someone else uncomfortable, but now you have to like, one of you or both of you is going to have to start in real time unlearning that script and practicing in real time a new script, rewriting the script and taking on an initiative that before sort of was second nature to not have to take on. And to always be on the other end of it because that's how you've been socialized, and also that is most likely what you've been socialized to believe is the appropriate role for you to take on. So it's going to be uncomfortable for so many different reasons because you're going against probably your socialization, probably against what we consider feminine, which is to not be too forward, right? And if you're a feminine individual, like you really internalize that idea, and you're going to have to flip the script and begin, playing with these different roles, these different ideas of roles. And that in real time, not only is a little difficult, like it's like, okay, what do I do? Like I don't have a script to follow. What do I do? Even if you really want to, you have to like rewrite the role, and then you're going to have to push past the discomfort of doing something new while being with somebody that you are hypersensitive of the consent to, if that makes sense. Like you're hypersensitive to not wanting to make them uncomfortable, while also trying to write the script in a way that allows you guys to move forward, break the platonic barrier, and have someone kind of like make a little bit of like that flirty initiative. And also being hypersensitive to the way that they have likely in their life been uncomfortable in romantic or intimate situations. Because many of us, especially women, feminine individuals in general, we have most likely been in situations where objectification and sexualization have been imposed upon us, and to varying degrees, some in very scary, traumatic degrees, and some just like everyday life. We consistently do experience that, the sexualization, and the expectation to just be an object of pleasure for somebody else, and the sort of discomfort that so many of us know. And especially if you've experienced a lot yourself, that discomfort. Like for me, I've experienced that, right? Like I've experienced the creepiness from cis men. I've experienced the scary catcalling. I've experienced being in a situation where I didn't know what to do because saying no didn't feel like an option, and also knowing that saying no wasn't really the polite thing to do, and being incredibly uncomfortable. And so if I'm in a situation with, for example, say another woman, I am so hyper aware of the fact that I know there's no way she hasn't also experienced that, and I know that experience in general. Not that even if she hadn't experienced that, I would ever want someone to feel that way. But I know that experience, and I know that she's most likely, if not 100%, has experienced something similar. And the last thing I think anyone would ever want to do is make somebody feel that way. Ever. Make somebody feel uncomfortable in any capacity, especially when you know that there's a good chance they have already felt that way, and you know how that feels. And like the last thing I would ever, would be to make somebody uncomfortable that way. That is. And so at that point, it feels like safer to not make any move in any capacity to avoid potentially making somebody uncomfortable, because that's terrible. Terrible. You don't want to make anyone uncomfortable ever, especially in any kind of like intimate, romantic, physically intimate, any kind of situation. And so it can make you so standoffish. And then I think you become so standoffish that sometimes the other person you're with might be like, okay, do they like me at all? Like, they kind of not even making eye contact with me right now. I actually don't know if she likes me at all. I think that's happened to me a lot. When I first started dating women, most of them, after we started like really going out for a while, they'd be like, wow, I really did not think you liked me at first. Like I was just very standoffish. Like it wasn't that I wasn't interested in them or like engaging conversationally. I just was like very much would not touch them in any capacity, like not even like touch their shoulder. I would make sure to not be like say any kind of flirty comment. It took a lot because I was so scared. I didn't want to make them uncomfortable. And so they didn't even think I liked them. And I guess I got lucky that like they ended up realizing, okay, like she does like me. But that's even worse, because then you're never going to get to date anyone ever if they can't even tell that you like them. But you get so standoffish that you can't do anything, and then you don't even seem interested at all, when it's like, no, I'm actually very interested, and that's the issue, is that I'm scared that because I'm interested, I'm going to be creepy because being a lesbian is creepy or being gay is creepy. And then also, what if I make you uncomfortable because I don't know, this is the first time I've like flipped the script and been someone who initiates things, and all I've seen through that is the heteronormative or like heterosexual media that's been very abrasive in these situations and made people uncomfortable, and I don't ever want to make someone else that uncomfortable, but how do you do it in a way that doesn't make people uncomfortable? What if I trigger you from a past experience and say anything that could make you uncomfortable, because I would never want to do that, and I know you've likely experienced these things. Like, there's so much going through your head, and you're so hyper aware of everything that they're doing. And I think it's good. You should always be very aware of the person that you're with, and you should always be aiming to read their body language to the best of your capability. But there comes a point where like you're overthinking so severely that there's no way you're going to actually even be able to be present and even read their body language, because you're already having all of these sort of decided fears impacting the way that you perceive their body language. You're going to, at that point, probably only see signs that you could potentially read as discomfort, because you're so afraid that that's all that's going to be, that's all you're going to be met with. And so then I think it comes back down also to the idea that we, as lesbians, as sapphics, the stuff that we're exposed to, not only most likely in our personal lives that we've experienced, but is women being uncomfortable in romantic situations. That is what we're exposed to. It's so normalized in media, so much film and media. It's always like, I don't know, if there's a heroine, she's always being chased and kind of forced into like marrying a man. Like, oh, he finally got her after he chased her and didn't like give up. He kidnaps her, and I don't know, I'm actually thinking about fan fiction and how there's that really weird trope in fan fiction where it's like, oh, my parents sold me to Harry Styles, or like One Direction bought me. Like, it's a crazy trope. Actually, one of the videos I'm going to do on consent is actually related to fan fiction, so I think it's interesting. But there's these crazy ideas that we have that like force and sort of persuading of women is really normal. And so that's what we see. We see women being coerced in these situations when somebody is initiating, and these like heterosexual dynamics that we see. And the book that I talk about in my consent series, it's called Sexual Consent by Milena Popova, talks a bit about this as well. And one of the things it talks about that I think really speaks to this, which I'll talk about in another video one day, but it's called the token resistance to sex myth. And this is what it says about it. Token resistance to sex myth. The idea that women will refuse sex if they secretly want it for a range of possible reasons. The concept of seduction, then, is premised on the notion that no does not always mean no, that women in particular cannot be trusted to clearly communicate their consent or non-consent. And I think that we not only experience that, but internalize it. And then we're in situations with other individuals that we are aware likely have had the exact same experience. And so you're in a situation where you probably internalize all these like homophobic ideas. Maybe you're pushing through them like, oh my God, anything I do, because being gay is weird and abnormal, is going to come out weird and abnormal and unwanted, because it's an unwanted trait apparently. But we also like have been so exposed to so much media that really pushes the narrative that women are not comfortable to be honest about how they're feeling in intimate situations, romantic, physically intimate situations. And so it makes it even harder to go forward in situations like that and flip the script, I guess, and be the one who initiates, because you know that not only have they likely experienced this sort of internalization that maybe no doesn't really mean no, or that it's apparently normal for women to kind of say no but actually still want it, which obviously you would not like think is the case. If a woman is, I highly doubt that if a woman was showing any signs of no, like I said, it's very sensitive to consent, that you would proceed. But sort of internalizing the idea that someone else feels that way, and you've also experienced that feeling, and then it's 1,000 times harder to find like the confidence, I guess, or feel safe or justified in initiating anything at all without really fearing that you're going to be making somebody uncomfortable and not even realize it, or they're, because of this like socialization, not going to feel comfortable saying how they really feel. And obviously when we're in sexual situations, we have to speak up for ourselves, and obviously it's dependent on the situation, because in some cases that's really not an option. There's all these different circumstances that occur, but assuming you're in a safe sexual situation, it's so important to learn how to begin to like speak up for yourself, right? And say how you really feel. But that's not always the case because of our socialization, that we always feel comfortable to do that. And so being aware of that and being someone who really cares, and also being aware of this trope that accompanies your identity, being in a position where you would have to flip the script in order to initiate anything can be really scary and daunting, and potentially something that's like too scary to even do, because in no way in hell do you want to risk making someone uncomfortable. And there's actually another line that I think like really speaks to this, the concept of saying no, and why we still might be hesitant even if a woman is like being like, no, yes, I want this in a lesbian situation, because of how we've been socialized to maybe not feel comfortable saying no. So another part of the book says, saying no, whether it is to a cup of tea, to going to the pub with friends, or to sex, is a socially tricky act. It is conversationally dispreferred. We worry about hurting others' feelings, and so we tend to soften and couch our no in other terms. Direct communication, and especially a direct refusal, is seen as masculine and socially penalized for unfeminine behaviors. And so this again just sort of supports the idea that sometimes saying no in very scary situations is not an option. But also we've really been socialized to not feel comfortable saying outright no, or saying no directly, because we've been so socialized to see it as sort of an inappropriate action, rather than somebody being sort of consistently, what would be the word, making advancements when somebody is not really engaging. That's somehow less socially inappropriate than it is for a woman, so to speak, to say no. And also for a feminine person to say no without losing apparently their feminine nature, or their feminine, sorry, my cat is at my feet, lose their feminine, perception. At that point, it's about sort of protecting, I guess, their feminine self-image, because it's taken from you apparently, or masculinized, if you just speak directly and say no. And so if you're a lesbian and you are very aware of how this affects other people around you and has affected you, and you've internalized that, there's so many reasons that when you're in a situation where you would want to initiate something, sort of break the platonic barrier, you have so many reasons that you can pull from in your head to be like, bad idea, no. And I'm a weirdo. And if I behave in any sort of like romantically, if I initiate anything romantically, I'm going to be a weirdo, and it's going to be unwanted and weird. And I don't know how to make sure that for sure 1,000% she wants it, because what if she's been socialized, it just feels uncomfortable, and I don't know that she's uncomfortable. What if I'm making her uncomfortable and I don't know that I'm making her uncomfortable? And it just puts you in a really tricky situation, because I don't know. It's just hard. I mean, I've talked about consent, and I've had some people comment being like they experience that hypersensitivity to consent, and always sort of being really hyper worried that the other person isn't actually as comfortable as maybe they're appearing or they're saying. And then just like being very scared to engage in any kind of intimacy. And yes, it puts you in a situation being aware of all of these different things that make you very hyper sensitive to another person and wanting to make sure that they're as comfortable as possible. But I think it becomes so much more about the way that you've so heavily internalized the ideas of discomfort in romantic situations, probably from your own experiences, and the way that we see it in media, especially in these heteronormative heterosexual dynamics, that it's really hard to fathom and imagine that somebody else could even be comfortable in a gay situation, because you've only ever seen discomfort in these sort of romantic situations, and the pursuit of, like, for example, a woman, like initiating the pursuing of a woman, some kind of flirty act. You see so much discomfort in addition to apparently being an inherently uncomfortable thing by being gay, and then being gay in your behavior. I think it becomes harder than anything to conceptualize a situation in which there would be comfort, that this could exist in a comfortable manner for somebody, for two people to experience intimacy and be comfortable. That it can just be a comfortable, very open and honest situation where nobody's feeling sort of coerced and nobody's feeling uncomfortable in the sense that they can't speak up for what they want, I think it becomes hard to even conceptualize that can exist, and then more so feel comfortable with your ability to recognize it, because all you've seen is the discomfort, and knowing that sometimes maybe, for example, a woman can seem like, kind of comfortable, but she's protecting herself, or it's like a side effect of socialization in the way that you protect yourself in these situations. And so how do you read a situation for something that you've never really even seen, and then trust that that's what it is, because you never want to make someone uncomfortable even in the slightest. And so it comes back, there's so many things that it comes back to, like our dominant sexual script, the predatory lesbian trope, feeling unnatural, being othered for being gay, having a hard time even believing that somebody else is experiencing attraction the way that you are, thus could even be attracted to you in this gay situation, because, oh my God, can they also experience gay attraction? And then having all these scripts, having to then rewrite the script while internalizing these homophobic ideas and these predatory tropes. There's so much that is impacting and influencing your ability to just see a situation clearly without being so terrified of discomfort in so many different reasons, and causing discomfort for another person that now the whole thing is probably, at least internally to you, feeling really uncomfortable. I don't know. It's a hard situation to be in, and I think it's like when you first come out and you're sapphic and you're going on dates with like women. I know so many people are like, I have no idea how to like make a move. Like, I don't know. I used to get comments on my TikTok when I would kind of talk about this, and so many people would be like, I really like her and it's never going to go any further because I can't even get myself to hold her hand. And it's just so true, like being terrified that you're being creepy. And there's so many different ways that we experience this within the LGBTQ community and how this impacts us. So this is just like right from the perspective of being a lesbian and a cis woman, but there's so many different ways that we're impacted by these predatory tropes and these harmful myths within the LGBTQ community, and these dominant scripts, and the way that these dominant scripts have been portrayed in media, which tend to be very uncomfortable for women, like the token resistance to sex myth that we see all the time, I think, in media, and how that impacts all of us. But this is like how I've experienced it as a cis lesbian or cis woman and a lesbian. And yeah, it was hard to get past. I will say that, like, for a long time, I was so nervous. I don't even make eye contact with a girl without worrying that she would think that I was sexualizing her, because that's what happens, right? That's what happens in our society. Women are being sexualized, and they can't be wanted without being sexualized, because that's what we see. These really like heterosexual, harmful narratives and practices. And so I don't want her to think that I'm seeing her that way or wanting her that way. I don't want her in this like very harmful, objectifying, heterosexual way that is often the narrative painted, right? Like in these heterosexual situations, especially in media. Like, I'm just so worried. I was so worried that I would make her feel that way. And it was hard for me to conceptualize that, it could exist in a way that wasn't like that, and she could feel that way and know that I was not seeing her that way, because I just never seen it, and then I'm thinking being gay is creepy. So it was having to rewrite the script and be with people that, were also gay and like actively wanted to be gay and do gay things. And, it's actually not that weird when you're on a gay date to practice some gay behaviors. And that's not to say you shouldn't always read the room. You should always read the room and directly communicate. Direct communication is so valuable, just being so upfront and direct. And yeah, it's probably a lot less weird and unwanted than you might think. I think so many of us are on dates where it's like, oh my God, I like them so much. I really want to make a move. And there's probably this tension, and both of you are thinking the exact same thing. So it's probably okay. I think a lot of times it's likely that it would be very encouraged on the other end for you to maybe make a little bit of a gay move. Not to say you shouldn't always be very aware, right, of the situation. But I know I've been in situations where I was like, okay, like if she did some gay behavior right now, I would be very happy because I really want to, but I'm scared, right? And then one of us eventually does. But it took me a long time to be able to like trust that, this could exist in a way that wasn't going to be uncomfortable. And that also somebody else could be experiencing gay attraction, lesbian attraction the way that I was, and trust that. And that took surrounding myself with more lesbians, more gay people, having more gay experiences, to really like start to internalize the idea that like, no, I'm not the only one in the world who actually very much experiences this kind of attraction. And maybe it's not 1,000% unwanted by every single person ever who is also gay, from me, because it's hard for me to imagine that anyone could be attracted to me, because I don't know. So it just took a lot, and I still do struggle with that a little bit. I just never think I'm anyone's type, ever. And I'm sure eventually it'll get less and less, but a lot of it just really is rooted in the idea that it's still kind of a little bit hard for me to sometimes believe that other people would even be like, experience lesbian attraction the way that I do. It's just a side effect of that really isolating, othering that experience as a kid. But yeah, I don't know. I know that I'm definitely not alone in this experience. I've actually gotten quite a few messages about this ever since I really even started posting on TikTok a few months ago, and even in comments on here. So I thought it'd be interesting to talk about, because I know that I'm not alone in this, and I know that so many other sapphic individuals and people just within the LGBTQ are impacted by these harmful myths, and especially when it comes to things like consent and making moves and flipping the script from the dominant script. There's so much discomfort that inherently comes with doing something new, out of the norm. And because you know the discomfort that has also come with these dominant scripts, wanting to make sure that it's written in a way that is as comfortable as possible. It just takes, I guess, like, I don't know, what would be the right word? More experiences, more like time around, I think, queer people in general is really helpful. I think it helps you internalize the idea and begin to witness other situations where that's already occurring and it's real and it does exist, and people can have gay engagements and interactions and enjoy it and not feel that discomfort that we see so normalized. And I think that's really helpful. I think it just took time for me, and also surrounding myself with gay people. I also think consuming some gay media was helpful. Even things like watching like other gay people on TikTok, other lesbians on TikTok, just watching other gay people exist within the world and have relationships that were, you know, they enjoyed and were normal, I guess is the best way to put it. And yeah, I think that I think it's really just surrounding yourself with as much LGBTQ community and experiences and narratives that you can, to really begin to integrate into a world where that does exist. That is the norm, and not everything has to look like what you've once seen. And even if you're following, I don't know, the script you write with someone is like looks heteronormative, which again, like, there's nothing wrong with those dynamics, like what we associate with a heteronormative dynamic. It's the institutional backing of oppression that comes with that word that we immediately associate that's harmful. But even if you have a dynamic that looks like how we would say like heteronormative, there's a more masculine presence, a more feminine presence, maybe take on more of those roles, however that looks. It also doesn't have to be something that exists in these uncomfortable, what would be the word, coercive manners like we see in media, like the token resistance to sex myth, you know? These are all just really harmful narratives and ideas that have been so heavily pushed. But that also doesn't have to exist in any sort of uncomfortable way, you know? Like, you can have a dynamic that looks like that isn't one that is uncomfortable the way that the dominant script tends to push, or the environment it tends to create, just because of like the really scary ideas that come with like obviously these heteronormative heterosexual cultures, like the token resistance to sex myth. But yeah, I guess that's kind of it. I guess that's kind of it. I have a Patreon video. It's free. I have 2 videos up there now that I posted as well if you're interested in it. And it was actually inspired by this, but the topic's a little bit different. I was talking about how comp het and self-coercion impacted sexual intimacy and intimacy in my lesbian relationships, particularly how like you can internalize the self-coercion that comes with comp het, and the way that impacted me in my like sexual life in queer relationships, and the concept of like self-coercion then in general, and then how that can impact like the roles you might play or the things you might believe about yourself, and when you're actually in like other intimate situations where you are experiencing like sexual desire. And so my Patreon, I created in general, I talked about this in my consent video, but the point of it, if you didn't see that, is just because there are so many conversations that I think are important to have that are just more mature, and that are conversations that can be taken down another path and be spoken about in a little bit more of an explicit or mature way. And I just don't feel comfortable having those conversations in a place where like a 12-year-old could search "am I gay?" come across one of my videos, because I make things like "are you gay or bisexual?" kind of stuff, and then see my videos and come across something that speaks about stuff like that, like sexual trauma, or like sex in a more explicit manner, the experience of sex, LGBTQ sex. I know it's just like one extra step, right? Like they could, I guess, watch this and then go there, but it is one extra step, and that's really important to me. So that is why I started it. And the videos over there are just more mature. There's one already up, and it's talking about the experience of not fitting the definitions, like the legal definitions and cultural definitions related to sex as a queer individual, and how that can impact like sexual trauma. So that's heavier. This video that I'll link down below about self-coercion, the impact of self-coercion in comp het, and then also the impact of being in a compulsory sexual society as well. It's not so heavy. It's just more like talking about these experiences, but with more explicit, mature themes, like roles in sex. So if you're interested in that, that'll be linked down below. And it does like dive in a little bit to the concepts of discomfort in sexual situations or intimate situations. So while speaking about discomfort here, but just like different avenues of it and different ways that we can think about it and different ways that it can come out and continue to influence us because we've internalized it. If you're interested in that, it'll be linked down below. It's free. And yeah, I guess that's it. I don't want to like ramble too much, but yeah, if you're experiencing this, I guess I just want to like give a reminder that immense discomfort, and you feel like you can't ever break the platonic barrier with someone, and you can like tell that they like you, but you're like, I can't get myself to do it, and they're too nervous to do it, or just know that there's probably a good chance that they probably would enjoy or be happy like having someone initiate, because they're probably just as afraid as you. Again, like you're reading the situation, and sometimes it can be hard to believe, but it is okay and often encouraged to behave in a gay way on a gay date with another gay individual. So yeah, I guess that's just what I'm gonna say. And okay, I guess that's it. I don't want to keep rambling. If you decide to go watch the Patreon video, I will see you over there. And if not, I will just end it here and say that if you have any thoughts on this, if you have any thoughts on this topic, personal experiences, just like any thoughts about anything actually at all. Oh, there's a bird that just landed on my door. Please feel free to share them. I would love to hear them. I would love to hear any experiences you have related to this. I think it's always really interesting and often probably a little bit funny, the experiences that we can have when we're so terrified of making any kind of move ever. But I would love to hear them. If you want to share it in the comment section, if you feel comfortable. And if anyone's weird or being bizarre, they get deleted immediately, so no one is going to bother you. And if there's something you want to talk about, whether it's related to this or anything else, but you don't feel comfortable having other people see it, my inboxes are always open. I have a submissions page on my website that'll be linked below, and I also have an email that'll be below. And you always feel free to send it to me. I'd be honored to read it, to see it. I'll be in your audience. And yeah, always feel free, whatever it is. If you just need something to talk about, if something's heavy on your heart, or you just have some thoughts that you want to share, and if you would like for other people to see it and it's a longer piece, I can publish it on my website, which I have other people's pieces published, and they're really wonderful, so they'll be linked below as well, and I encourage you to read them. And yeah, I guess that's it. I post videos on like Instagram and TikTok sometimes, and okay, yeah. I will see you in the next video, and if you're going to watch Patreon, I will see you over there, and if not, I will see you in the next video here, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.